Hi guys, it's Grace from Grace Gets Gastric, and I am here today with the third video in my pre-op series. If you've been following along, I had a video on my requirements and my timeline, and then I also have a video out so far on my initial my seminar and my initial appointment. But today's video is going to be all about my medically supervised weight loss diet, which was required by my insurance for me to qualify for surgery. So my insurance required a 6-month medically supervised weight loss diet. This is a very common requirement for most insurances that I've seen. 6 months is pretty common. I've also seen 3 months or 4 months, but it's pretty likely that you will be required to do some kind of pre-op diet if you are trying to get your insurance to cover your bariatric surgery within the United States. So again, blanket disclaimer that this is entirely based on my experience. Your mileage may vary for your surgery, so keep that in mind. I'm just sharing how my experience was. So like I said in previous videos, I had my first dietitian appointment in June. So I showed up and I'm not going to go into, I had a lot of drama with appointments and stuff in my clinic's office, to be honest. And I think I could just do a whole video about that, but who cares? It has nothing to do with the actual approval process, so I'll just jump right into the actual meat of things. So with every one of my appointments, we would first meet and do my vitals. So get my weight done, go on the fancy scale that does all my body metrics, blood pressure, etc., all of those things. And then I would meet with a dietitian for an hour each time. Didn't always use the full time, but plenty of time to talk with them. So for that first appointment, like I mentioned with my seminar, there wasn't a whole lot of information that they told me that I didn't kind of already know. They were actually really impressed with how much I seemed to know. I think that a lot of people who get the surgery and maybe that they're used to dealing with are people who are perhaps a bit older and maybe not as technologically savvy and haven't done as much research as I did before I even did the seminar. So I was pretty well versed on kind of the general aspects of eating post-op. But we talked about it. We talked about the dietary restrictions before, immediately after, and then long-term after the surgery, specifically the kinds of things you'd want to avoid. They heavily recommend food journaling, which I had already started doing. We talked about vitamins and the vitamin regimen post-op, and keep in mind that at this point I am still undecided between the RNY and the VSG, though I am leaning towards VSG. We talked about vitamins. They actually gave me a sample of their multivitamins, the Bariatric Advantage ones, because for the first month post-op, for this clinic at least, they require you to take chewable vitamins, and so they had little sample packs. I like them. I know little Kansas Kitty hates the Bariatric Advantage chewables. I like them. I think they taste like the Flintstone vitamins. I had no problems with them before or after surgery. But yeah, we talk about portion sizes and things to avoid, specifically post-op. She had a measuring cup and sort of showed me this is about how big your stomach will be, which again, all stuff I already knew from my research, but cool to go over it and kind of talk more about it. And then she also talked about the idea of moving to smaller and more frequent meals. This is something that varies from program to program. I've seen several programs advocate for 3 meals a day, full stop. My program is about small meals throughout the day. So 5 to 6 meals a day, which is about how many meals I eat currently. And to be clear, this isn't like grazing or eating throughout the day. These are planned meals, smaller, but fully planned so that you can get to your nutritional goals. So at this appointment, we came up with a set of goals. The first ones were specifically around my parameters for my 6-month diet. Their only nutritional requirements were that I hit over 150 grams of protein a day and that I eat below 135 net carbs a day. The 135 net carb thing is fairly common for low carb diets. I know for many of us, post-op particularly, or any of you know ketoers, etc., 135 carbs seems like a lot. It's really not that much for a regular person with a regular stomach who's used to eating a standard American diet. And I say that because I did it for 6 months, mostly successfully, but like I had to try to hit below 135. It was not something that someone coming from a standard American diet, you know, you easily eat 2-3 times that amount. And then also to do a food journal, complete a food journal every day. I use my FitnessPal. I've been using that since basically the seminar, pretty consistently. So coming on 2 years now, I have, especially post-op, I've used it every day. Pre-op, there were days that I didn't, particularly while traveling. Some other goals that we had was to switch to non-fat or 1% milk for all milk consumption. I don't drink much milk except for in recipes or in coffee. So if I get lattes, like at Starbucks. So this wasn't a hard one for me to do. It also said to do not drink for the 30 minutes following a meal. For those of you who have had surgery or are looking into it, you have, I'm sure, heard about the not eating and drinking at the same time thing. This was very hard for me as pre-op. I loved to drink and eat at the same time. It is still something that I miss being able to do. Sorry, my phone just decided to stop recording. Anyways, it was something that I'm glad that I started before surgery, though of course I was not as dedicated to it as I am now. Now it's like a necessity. Additionally, they wanted me to try several protein recipes or powders for me to start looking into the kind of powders I enjoy, because that is such a variable thing in terms of taste. And they had some requirements about like what you should look for in a good protein drink and protein powder if you're making a recipe. And then also to chew each bite of food 20 times before swallowing. So basically they just wanted me to start working on thoroughly chewing my food so I would get used to it, which is again something that I really had to work on, because I eat fast, take big bites that I barely chew, and then I drink while I'm eating. So I had a lot of things pre-op, and I think that's not uncommon. I think a lot of us have stuff like that. So those were kind of the food goals I had from that first appointment. And then I would meet with my dietitian every single month. And unfortunately, I met with several different dietitians just because of how my schedule worked out. I would have liked to have stayed with the same one just for like consistency's sake, but it was nice getting to talk to different ones and get different, feelings, etc. But every appointment we would update on the goals. So we would talk about my goals. I would usually share my food diary with them. We'd kind of go over my standard meals, or standard day of eating. We talk about food goals. We talk about maybe adding additional different kinds of goals for things to work on. We would, and then talk about different things. They had like different kind of agenda items to move through, and then I would answer, they would answer any of my questions, talking about net carbs, talking about, again, like one of the things we talked about, one appointment was shakes. And so they have like this whole sheet on shakes and like what do you want to look for in terms of macros, in terms of ingredients. We talk about milk intolerance and how that is common, particularly with people who get like the RNY or any kind of malabsorptive procedure. Often will develop milk intolerance, so you want to make sure you find a protein drink or a powder that you can mix with non-lactose milk. They also had something on protein bars, so some recommendations for protein bars that were, again, what to look for, that kind of thing. For my program, my insurance, I was not required to lose weight. There was no weight loss requirement. I do know that some insurances or some programs do require you lose weight on the pre-op diet, and if you're doing it correctly, you probably should. As I've mentioned in my little spiel, I lost 35 pounds over the course of that 6-month diet, but I was not focusing on weight loss. That was not my goal. It wasn't the program's goal either. For me, it was just to practice habits. So start thinking about the kinds of foods that I'm eating, the macro breakdown, what composes a day of eating, practicing habits for post-op. So, you know, practice eating smaller meals several times a day, the eating and drinking, the chewing your food thoroughly, taking small bites, you know, going for high protein foods, going for lower carb foods. So like all of these kinds of things that were really specifically meant for me to work on building habits. And I think that was great, honestly. I'm very grateful that I did have that forced time, even though at the time I was not happy about it. I do think it was really beneficial for me. I will say, like I said, I met with them every single month. By month 4 of the 6 months, I felt ready. I think 4 months would have been perfect amount of time for me. I felt like at that point I had kind of hit the groove. I had kind of figured things out, and I felt like emotionally and physically ready for it. And then I still had 2 more months, but it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. But I do think 4 months is, I think, a good range. So yeah, that is my kind of quick breakdown of my 6-month medically supervised weight loss diet. And really, you know, the primary things were food journaling, over 150 protein, under 135 carbs. They had no restrictions on calories or fat. So, you know, I wasn't like really going super low calorie, but just by focusing on those 2 things, I was naturally falling within a deficit. And so I did lose weight over the course of those 6 months. Anyways, hope you enjoyed hearing all about my weight loss diet, and I hope you're enjoying this series. And I've got, I think, 3 more videos planned in the series. So I will see you soon. Bye!